She said the farm sanctuary was for healing her heart, but it was where she learned to love the volunteer more than me. A truth that revealed itself not in a slammed door or a weeping confession, but in the clinical print of a veterinarian's invoice and the unshakable, trusting gaze of a lamb that should not have existed. The silence in our city apartment after the third failed IVF had become a physical entity, a thick, sound-absorbing wool that muffled not just our voices, but our very spirits. The hope we had injected, literally and figuratively, had evaporated, leaving behind a residue of chemical grief and a mutual, unspoken accusation that hovered in the perfectly conditioned air. Claire moved through the rooms like a phantom, her touch on objects hesitant, as if she feared breaking more than just china. My world was one of container ships and arbitrage, of solving massive, tangible problems with spreadsheets and satellite tracking. But this slow dissolution of the woman I loved was a leak I could not plug, a vessel I could not route. My solution was a strategic retreat in a bold repositioning. If the environment was toxic, we would change the environment. I found the listing for the old Henderson place late one night, the glow of the monitor the only light in my study. 60 acres, a farmhouse with a sagging porch but good bones, a barn that promised purpose. It was a world away. A sanctuary, I said to her the next morning, the word feeling foreign and wholly on my tongue. For animals, for us. We'll call it Haven. She looked at the pictures, her fingers tracing the screen over a field of overgrown grass, and in her eyes for the first time in a year, I saw a flicker not of happiness, but of interest, a pilot light sputtering back to life in a long cold furnace. Haven, she repeated, testing the word. It was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in months. I approached the project with the same logistical fervor I applied to a new shipping corridor. I became a patron of a new, strange arts, veterinary supply catalogs, pasture seed mixes, the geopolitics of well digging. The money flowed from my world to this one in steady, substantial wires. I hired contractors remotely, vetted rescue organizations, set up the nonprofit structure. For the first 6 months, I was a commuter to paradise, spending Monday to Thursday in my steel and glass office orchestrating the movement of goods across oceans, and Friday to Sunday in muddy boots, helping erect fences under Claire's quiet, increasingly confident direction. The transformation in her was profound, and I believed miraculous. The city pallor was replaced by a healthy burnish from the sun. Her hands, once meticulously manicured, grew chapped and strong. She learned to administer shots, to trim hooves, to sit for hours with a feverish goat. Her murmurs a steady healing rhythm. The hollows under her eyes filled. She slept deeply, exhausted by honest labor. I watched this rebirth from a grateful distance, my own heart swelling with a pride so fierce it brought tears to my eyes during my long Sunday night drives back to the city. I had done it. I had engineered an escape from sorrow. Then came the vet. Dr. Elias Eli Ford was a local institution, the third-generation large animal veterinarian for the county. Our first encounter was over a distressed pregnant ewe. He arrived in a dusty pickup, a man who seemed carved from the same weathered oak as the barn door. He moved with a slow, deliberate economy that instantly calmed the frantic animal. His hands, large and scarred, were both forceful and infinitely gentle. Claire watched him, utterly rapt, as if he were a mystic performing a sacrament. He saved the ewe and her twins. From that day, he became the de facto heart of Haven's medical operations. His weekly visits, then bi-weekly, then seemingly constant presence, were a line item I gladly paid. His invoices were my most cherished expense reports. They were proof of life, of care, of her happiness. I'd return on Fridays to find them in the barn aisle, heads bent over a microscope slide or deep in discussion about pasture rotation and parasite loads. Their language was a new dialect, a blend of Latin medical terms and earthy pragmatism. Eli thinks the soil is too acidic for the alfalfa, she'd say, or Eli showed me a new way to splint a bird's wing. His name was the punctuation of our new life. I was the distant benefactor, the weekend warrior. He was the daily hands, the embodied knowledge. It felt like a perfect, symbiotic triangle. I was too busy funding the dream to notice I was being edited out of it. The first anomaly was subtle, a shift in the financial paperwork. Eli's invoices, once crisp lists of procedures and medications, began to include vague extended charges. On-site consultation, behavioral integration, 4 hours. Sanctuary ecosystem wellness planning, 6 hours. The timesheets often placed him at the farm long after sundown. When I queried it during a weekend review, Claire was ready with an answer that smelled of rehearsed sincerity. He's not just a vet, Leo. He's a partner in the vision. He believes in what we're building here. He donates half his time. Those evening sessions, we're planning the 5-year sustainability model. It's about building a true refuge, not just running a clinic. She spoke with a calm authority that brooked no argument, an authority I realized she'd borrowed from him. I accepted it. The mission was paramount. The betrayal unveiled itself in 2 acts, one a digital ghost, the other a living, breathing fact. Buried in the Haven Operations cloud drive, within a folder titled Eli, Protocols and Philosophy, I found a scanned document. It was not a protocol. It was a handwritten page, a journal entry in a confident, sloping script. Observation: Claire with the new arrival, the Dorset Cross. There is a stillness in her that communicates more than language ever could. We sat in the straw for an hour after the Dex injection, just witnessing the lamb's breath. She spoke of the void inside her after the city, after the losses. I told her nature's first law is to fill emptiness. It abhors a vacuum. It will send in rust, or weeds, or roots, or new life. She looked at me then, and I saw the roots taking hold. Not just in the soil, but in her. This place isn't her escape. It is her becoming. And in witnessing her becoming, I find a reflection of a self I had misplaced. Our harmony isn't spoken. It's written in the rhythms here, in the animal breaths, the turning of the seasons, the quiet understanding between 2 people who have finally come home. I read it until the words dissolved into meaningless shapes. Our harmony. Come home. This wasn't a vet's note. It was a pastoral love letter, composed in my barn, about my wife and filed in my digital storage as a business document. The cold that seeped into my bones was absolute. The second act was wool-covered and bleated in the pasture. A ewe we'd rescued in a terrible state of neglect surprised everyone by delivering a single viable lamb. It was an odd, striking creature, jet-black face with a distinctive salt and pepper speckled fleece, unlike any of our other sheep. Claire was enchanted. She named it Cosmos. Eli was a constant presence, his pride in the animal palpable, proprietary almost. A nagging suspicion, the kind my business instincts were built on, took root. I knew Eli maintained a small private flock of Jacob sheep, a rare, ancient breed known for its distinctive, multicolored, spotted fleece. On my next trip to the city, I plucked a tuft of wool from Cosmos's back, sealed it in an evidence bag from my own paranoid corporate security kit, and sent it to an agricultural DNA lab. The email result was a clinical coup de grace. Cosmos was not a Dorset cross. She was a 50-50 hybrid, maternal breed. Dorset, paternal breed. Jacob. The timeline of the ewe's rescue and her gestation period aligned perfectly with the early fervent days of Eli's donated time. This lamb, this living creature my wife cradled with maternal devotion, was a biological symbol of their union, a creature born of his seed and her nurture, on my land, under my roof, funded by my capital. It was the ultimate symbol of my displacement. The emotional impact was not a storm, but an ice age. A vast, frozen calm descended. They had taken my sanctuary, my constructed answer to profound sorrow, and turned it into their pastoral idol. My wife and the country vet were playing house among the creatures I paid to feed, their love story woven into the very fabric of the daily chores. Their romance had the aesthetic of honest simplicity, but it was built on a foundation of my complex, distant labor. The fury was glacial, patient, and precise. They believed they lived outside the systems I operated in. They were wrong. Even the most rustic life is governed by laws of ownership, contract, and consequence. I began not with a shout, but with a silent restructuring. First, the financial audit. My lawyer sent a formal, impeccably worded query to Eli Ford's veterinary practice, requesting a full, itemized reconciliation of all billed services versus pro bono hours donated to Haven Animal Sanctuary, citing IRS compliance requirements for 501c3 organizations and potential liability issues. It was a bureaucratic spear tipped in cold legality. The message was unambiguous. His generosity was now a liability under a microscope. Next, I used my core competency, supply chains. I sourced a bulk feed supplier from 3 counties over, securing a contract at 30% below the local co-op's rate, a co-op the Ford family had run for 50 years. I cited fiduciary responsibility to the sanctuary's donors. It was a small, precise economic sabotage, a reminder that their rustic paradise was tethered to my commercial decisions. My true retaliation, however, was to hold a mirror up to their beautiful lie. I commissioned a story from a respected journalist at a national animal welfare magazine, pitching a piece on the emotional toll and ethical complexities of the modern animal sanctuary. I directed her, with feigned naivete, to the heart and soul of the operation, Claire and Eli. The journalist, a perceptive woman named Simone, spent a week embedded. She saw the easy intimacy, the shared glances over the backs of animals, the way Eli's hand would find the small of Claire's back to guide her, a touch that lingered a second too long. Her resulting article was a beautifully written, devastating exposé. It portrayed a poignant, unspoken love story blossoming amidst the rescued creatures, a tale of 2 wounded healers finding solace in each other. My role was relegated to a single phrase, funded by a private benefactor. The article went viral within its niche. It canonized their affair as a destined, almost mythical partnership, and in doing so, it exposed it to the light. Claire's parents, devout and traditional, were horrified. The local community, outwardly friendly but deeply judgmental, now viewed Eli not as the helpful vet, but as the man who'd stolen a vulnerable city woman from her husband under the guise of charity. The rustic idol was suddenly stained with scandal. The final act was the quietest, the most absolute. I listed the property. As the sole title holder, it was my right. The listing appeared online, showcasing the picturesque barn, the rolling pastures, the perfect opportunity for a boutique organic operation or private retreat. When Claire confronted me, her face a mask of tear-streaked fury, I was in the farmhouse study, boxing the last of my books. "You can't do this. This is Haven. This is everything, our life," she screamed, the words tearing from her. "No," I replied, my voice flat, empty of the anger she expected. "It's a piece of real estate, and Haven was a concept I financed to heal you. It appears to have been clinically successful, just not according to my original treatment plan. You found your purpose. You found your partner. The therapeutic objective has been met." I nodded toward the window, where Eli's truck was idling at the end of the drive, not daring to come closer. "The sanctuary was never about the animals, Claire. It was always the vessel I built to carry your pain away. You've filled that vessel with him, and with that." I pointed to Cosmos, the speckled lamb, now sturdy and bold, grazing obliviously in the field. "So the project is concluded. The assets are being liquidated. I sold the land to a developer specializing in high-end agri-wellness resorts. The animals, including Cosmos, were transported en masse to a well-regarded sanctuary in another state. The cost of their relocation, my final anonymous donation." Claire moved into Eli's cramped farmhouse. The last updates, gleaned from the fading grapevine, were bleak. Eli's practice suffered from the whispered scandal and the loss of my substantial, regular retainers. The local farming community, tight-knit and moralistic, gave them a wide, chilly berth. The pastoral romance, stripped of the stage, the funding, and the insulating narrative, proved to be a hard, financially precarious, and lonely affair. I am back in my city tower. The silence here is of my own choosing, a clean, minimalist silence. I keep no photos of her or the farm, but I keep the DNA test report for the lamb, Cosmos, filed in a drawer. It is a single sheet of paper, a monument of cold, scientific fact in a world they tried to build on poetry and stolen glances. The sanctuary was conceived to heal a wound born from the absence of life. In its final, cruel irony, It produced a new life that served as the ultimate, bleeding evidence of my own irrelevance. She went to that farm to mend her broken heart, and she succeeded by handing the pieces to another man in the very sanctuary I constructed to be a safe place for her to heal. I, the architect, learned too late that you can design a perfect refuge from the storm, but you cannot dictate who someone invites inside to share the warmth once the door is closed.